Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB Bikini Pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. It has been 6 years since Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast launched for the very first time, and I have done the math on that so many times because on one hand, it feels like it's been longer than that. And on the other hand, it feels like everything just started the other day. But I think what's happened is so much of my life has changed as a result of choosing to start this podcast. And it's almost like I can't imagine having never had the podcast. So I decided for the 6-year anniversary that I would do a solo episode, not just to thank you all for listening, but also to share a few different things. So I'm going to share 6 lessons I've learned, 6 mental health tips, because you guys know I'm a clinical mental health counselor, and I like to share that. That's what I focus on with competitors, all because of this podcast, which we'll get into soon. And then 6 goals that I have for this podcast, as well as just some different reflections that I've had. So I'll share 6 reflections. And I was thinking of doing other stuff too, but I'm going to leave it at this for now. And then maybe in the future, I'll do like some special episodes or celebrations for this more specifically. So first and foremost, thank you guys for being a part of this, whether this is the first episode you're listening to or watching on YouTube, Celestial_Fit, or if you have been around since day one. It's amazing how many of you have been around since day one. And so I feel like we've grown a lot together through this sport and the industry and this community. And that's just so crazy to think about how much we've grown together. And I've interviewed people who listened from year one. I've had them on my podcast and they were amateurs when they started listening, or they had never even competed yet. And I've had people who tell me that their dream is to come on this show. And I'm like, it's my dream to have you guys on this show. I'm so inspired and excited and encouraged knowing how many of you have fallen in love with this show and made it part of your daily life or part of your routine, whether that's in prep or out of prep or when you're considering what you're going to do next. It means so much to me. What especially means a lot to me too is hearing from you guys, seeing the reviews, the ratings, seeing you guys message me with the most kind things or encouraging me and saying what a difference it's made, or that you never want me to stop doing this, or that you can see the hard work I've put into it. I think there's a misunderstanding or misconception about podcasting. I mean, now podcasting is so popular and a lot of people have a podcast, and I think that's awesome. But I think there's a misunderstanding that people with a podcast are like making a ton of money off of it and have all these tools and things provided for them. In reality, you guys, it's a passion project. At least for me, it's a passion project, and it always has been, and it will continue to be that way. And it's opened up my world. It gave me even more purpose with my passion for mental health and psychology and personal development. And it provided me an amazing audience and community to serve. It's what opened the door to me offering the Build More Than Just a Body mission and message and trademark to competitors, to bodybuilders. And it's allowed me to work with so many people, not even just competitors, but other athletes and teams and lifestyle groups. It's amazing what happens when you trust and you take that leap of faith and say, let's do this. Let's go forward with it. Let's just see what happens. There was never a business plan behind this podcast. It was purely passion, and yet it opened up everything. That's going to be one of my reflections I'll share with you soon before I just start blabbing off. But I want to share a big thank you to start more than anything, because I yes, I started the podcast 6 years ago, and there wasn't really podcasts like this at all out there. And now it's been amazing to see the industry evolve so much, but to have your guys' continued support and love and promoting the podcast for me or sharing it on your story or tagging the athletes when you listen or reaching out, it goes a long way and it means so much. And I know people probably hear Confessions of a Bikini Pro and they think either it's going to be something really juicy or maybe, and sometimes it is, or they think it's going to be like just about fitness and nutrition and prepping. But you guys know, I feel like sometimes these are more like therapy sessions, which I love, and it's amazing. So I'm going to start with the 6 lessons I've learned. Okay. So for one, everyone is beautiful and inspiring. I get asked often what my favorite episode is or was, or the athletes that I like the most. And I can tell you right now, every single woman has brought a different perspective and insight and wisdom and perspective. That's really what it is to this show that I am grateful for and appreciate. And every coach that's been on the podcast or when I've done feature episodes, it's been incredible. So I couldn't tell you, but everyone is beautiful and inspiring. So, second of all, uh, let's see. You know, what's funny is I made these little notes and I'm looking at it like, what did I even write down? So everything's not as it seems. This is my second lesson. So I can say personally, when I sit down to record a podcast, it's podcast mode. And there's life outside of podcast mode for not just me, but the athletes too. But the podcast gives us an opportunity to connect on such a real level where I feel like I get to pull out pieces of athletes that aren't being shared on social media or aren't generally being discussed among each other at events or aren't generally being shared in a message exchange. So being able to have these really deep conversations allows us to remember that everything's not as it seems, whether that's on social media or otherwise, and that a smile, a conversation, a question, a connection can really change someone's perspective and their life and make them feel so good and also help them to be vulnerable and open as well. I also know that a lot of us are in this, I guess you could say, industry of if it's a business related thing. Maybe we choose to share certain things or not other things, but the podcast, I think, has just always allowed us to have real conversations. That's why I started it. I mean, the very first episode I remember with Tamara, I thought that my podcasts were going to be 30 minutes long. You guys are probably laughing. I literally started this podcast thinking all my podcasts would be like 30, 45 minutes. I think that was more so my self-doubt talking, like thinking the pros won't want to come on and talk for that long. They're busy or no one's going to want to listen. But over time, and tomorrow was the first episode and we were like an hour and a half or something crazy. And that allowed me to go, you know what? I can have really big conversations with people. Number 3, you will get better when you try. So this is a big lesson I've learned from podcasting. If you go back and listen to the first, like probably year of episodes, and then you continue, or if you have been with me for a long time, you'll see the progression of my interview style. You'll see the progression of me being willing to share my own perspectives, and share my own opinions as well, or my own pieces of my story. In the beginning, I was very much like not contributing much to the conversation as far as like my thoughts, my opinions, my experiences. But over time, I've gotten much better about that. I also think the flow of my conversations it has improved. I don't think that it was ever bad. I just know it's improved. So you'll never get better unless you try. And a lot of times people will tell me they want to wait to do something until they can XYZ. Oftentimes, if we are okay, there's this great quote by Jordan Peterson, which is "The fool precedes the master." Actually, if you look that up, there's a speech, like a little 2.5 minute video on YouTube with that. It's so good. But if you're willing to be the fool, you are allowing yourself to eventually become the master. And I've always considered myself someone who is blazing a trail in the industry in many ways, from starting this podcast, but then also the mental health. And that's very important to me, which I have some other thoughts on that I'm going to be sharing later, and they might surprise you. So number 4, fourth lesson, this podcast means more to me than anything else within the industry could really mean outside of making an impact on my clients directly. So this podcast has allowed me to serve a population that I love to serve. And I've been, I think about getting my pro card one day and how that's a goal that I'm working towards and I've been building towards. But something I said in the beginning of my journey was I would never start a family until until I had my pro card. But then as I got older, that started to change. My perspectives on life started to change. But more than anything, this podcast is so fulfilling for me. And I'm still going to pursue these goals. And I love competing. It's my lifestyle. It's what I do. I've done it now it'll be a decade in 2025 of competing, but I started the fitness journey a few years prior to that. So it's been a long time. But this podcast is the impact. It is the reason. I know that if nothing else got accomplished and this isn't going to be the case, but I know that if tomorrow everything was taken away from me, I would be proud that I did this. So the 5th lesson, you make more of a difference than you know. Whenever people tell me about the difference I'm making with this podcast or what it means to them or their perspective on me as a podcaster, I'm like, whoa, I wouldn't have seen myself that way. I wouldn't have seen it that way in general. It's just mind-blowing to me. And also there's times where this is thankless. I put that in quotes because I'm not doing this to get thanks, but I will say this is a lot of work. And sometimes I don't know that you don't always get credit, but it doesn't really matter because you don't know the impact you're really making. So that one message or that reach out or that review, it really touches me to know you guys are tuning in and loving it. And my last lesson I'll share is that you can do it all and more. The other day, someone sent me a really sweet message, just highlighting how they're like, wow, I can't believe how you've done this. And and then I actually interviewed someone the other day and she was like, you've been showing up every single week with this podcast, yet I look at your Instagram, you're over here one week, you're over there one week, you're always traveling, you're doing stuff, you're contributing to the industry, you're helping all these clients. How are you doing it? And I was like, I don't even know. And that was a lesson I had, which is even when I was going through my master's degree and I was paying for my master's degree out of pocket, I was running my business, running the podcast, and doing the internship that's required for that, and prepping for nationals. Wow. A national show, I should say, not nationals, a national show. I was able to still keep up with producing an episode every week. And I look back, I'm like, I don't know how I did it, but you can do more than you know, and you can do it all. So don't limit yourself, That's something else. People say you're so inspiring and you can do all this, and I don't know how you do it. I don't even know how. I mean, I do a lot of scheduling, a lot of time management. We could get into the nitty-gritty, and I'd be happy to lay it out for you guys. But at the end of the day, I think anybody is capable of doing it. I don't think there's anything special over here that's allowed me to do it necessarily, although I did a lot of personal development work, a lot of growth work. I've always been very driven and highly motivated and entrepreneurial. So there are factors like that at play. But at the end of the day, if you have passion for something and a desire for a dream to come true, I think you will make the time and the effort to do it. And if you don't hold yourself to an unrealistic standard and you're just okay with doing one thing at a time and allowing it to progress, that's really good too. So I'm going to share the 6 mental health tips next. This was a surprising request I got that you guys want to hear more from me. I've always told myself, you will not be a guest on your podcast until you're an IFBB pro, which I know I've done solo episodes in celebration of stuff like this, but as far as like a full interview with me, I mean, we did that little episode with Adam reflecting on my season, which was awesome. You guys loved it. At least it seemed like it. So I'm going to share 6 mental health tips. So have an identity outside of the sport. Know who you are outside of the sport. If you got into this sport not knowing who you are, and now you've rooted your identity into the sport, please try to engage in things outside of the sport. You are more than just a body, right? Build more than just a body. Emphasis on just a body. because your body's going to change. It's going to evolve. It's going to be rewarded one day and the next day not. You are more than that. You're more than competing. Competing has given so much to my life and continues to and will continue to, and I want to continue to give back to the industry. I also know that I have an identity outside of the sport. So I would encourage you to explore that and ask yourself, how would others describe me without bodybuilding? How would I describe myself without bodybuilding? Maybe even ask some of your friends. Number 2, don't wait to make an impact or follow your dreams. I kind of touched on this with the lessons, but a lot of times people think they have to wait until they win an overall, they win a show, they go pro before they follow through on a dream. My suggestion is, if you have a dream in your heart and you're qualified and capable of delivering on what it is you're promising, go for it. Don't wait for the title. Go for it. Number 3, follow and promote your values. So without ruffling feathers, I think there are things in this industry that may not align with everybody's values, and it can be very easy to feel like you need to mimic what others are doing and being rewarded for. And I've been there where I would be like, oh, I got to pose this way because that's what we're doing. And then it didn't feel right. And you look back and you're like, that wasn't me. So I highly encourage you to know your values and follow and promote them. And I say promote them because as women, we are more likely to model other people, especially in an upward comparison. We are more likely to model other women who are being rewarded positively in the way that, or reinforced positively in the way that we wish or seek to be, or that we perceive as better for the industry or whatever it is the community we're part of. So follow and promote your own values. You will find people who align with them more. You will feel better about what you're doing. You will feel more congruent with yourself. And that's very important. Number 4, remember that data is a tool. And also remember that tools are tools. So what does that mean? So all the data you track, macros, sleep, weight, measurements, whatever it might be, those are all tools. They are not defining factors. Data does not define you completely. So we want to be extra careful to see a tool as a tool and not as something we rely on. If you get to a point where you cannot trust yourself with food unless you're weighing and measuring, or it's on your plan, or you can't look at your body unless it's a certain weight or percentage or measurement, or without ridiculing and judging yourself, or not allowing yourself to wear certain clothing, we may be running into an issue mentally. So focus on the fact that data is a tool and tools are tools. When you start to develop an over-reliance on something, it's very important to step back, reevaluate, and challenge that. Number 5, gym is not therapy. Therapy is therapy. Gym is not therapy. The gym is a great place to go. Blow some steam off, get totally focused. Like, I know that when I'm in the gym, all I can focus on is lifting that weight. So it's a great way for me to disconnect from all the other demands of my day. And when I lost my mother, it was a really great way for me to keep in a routine, to do something for me. And I don't even know what my workouts were like at that time. I can barely remember anything from that time. But it was something that gave me routine and structure, and it was something I could do for myself, and I could go somewhere and let it out there. But you still have to do the inner work. And to say that the gym is your only coping skill, you're going to run into some problems, I'm sure. So number 6, do audits. Audit your life. Audit your prep. Audit your improvement season. Audit your approach. Audit your relationships, your work, your time. Complete audits. So we don't want to live a life of reactivity where we're just kind of, okay, what's next? What's happening next? I got to go do this. I got to do that. Let's do an audit on what was your prep really like? And is it something you could do again and moving forward, or is there something that needs to change? Did something about your prep make your improvement season a bit more difficult? Maybe something you didn't do, maybe something you didn't focus on, like maybe you swept all your emotions under the rug and then it hit you post-show and then you didn't have any coping skills, so you turned to food and so on and so forth. So do audits so that you can find ways to improve and progress. I think the key to longevity in this sport is having your mental health in check, first and foremost, and also choosing a pathway that is challenging in a way that's rewarding and builds efficacy and resilience, but also not so challenging that it turns into a judgment, criticism, diminishing returns, and wanting to pull back or go the complete opposite end of the spectrum because you feel like a failure. So those are my 6 mental health tips. I'm happy to expand on those for you guys. I didn't want this episode to be super, super long. So now let me share 6 goals for the podcast. So number 1, you guys, I have a studio in my house. I was thinking of recording this in there. I'm gonna be honest. I'm overwhelmed by that studio. Not in a I'm not gonna make it happen type of a way, but I got into podcasting for the podcast, for the conversations, not the production. So that's something that's been interesting for me. I honestly, when I launched the idea of Confessions of Bikini Pro Podcast experience, and this is the goal is to have these experience episodes where pros are coming over to my house, we record the episode, we record them making their favorite meal, we record them working out or us doing something together, posing, whatever it might be, just a day in the life, really. I had this idea and I was so excited about it. People seemed excited about it, but I'm like not so people can be excited about it without making efforts for it. And I hope this doesn't ruffle any feathers, but it's just the truth. So I have to take responsibility for the fact that I made that studio. I invested a lot of money into the studio, a lot of money. If you guys know how much a really good camera costs, times that by 3 because I have 3 of them. And then you got to get your audio set up and everything. And it's just become overwhelming. And it made me realize this is one of my reflections. So maybe I should just share it now. But it's made me realize that more isn't always more. Now, that's been a consistent lesson in my life lately. So the goal is to do episodes for the Confessions of a King Pro podcast experience. Hopefully some pros listening are like, I want to be part of that and I'm going to make it happen and I'm going to come and do it. Or those who have said that they are interested can find some time to do it, because that's something I really would like to see happen. And I'm going to give it probably until the end of this year, maybe into early next. And then I'm going to reevaluate that goal and decide if it's really what I want to do for the podcast. Because I love just getting on Zoom and recording and putting out episodes every week for you guys. I think once I get more comfortable with the studio and the recording, and I have an amazing assistant who's going to edit things, then it could be better. And I have someone who's kind of helped me pick out the microphones and all that. Then I think it could work out, but it doesn't take away from the fact that you need to be producing that content. And I'm just starting to wonder if that investment wasn't the best investment for the podcast or me as a person. And so I have to reevaluate that. And who knows, I may end up selling all of the equipment and just doing what I already do and love to do, or I might end up loving doing the Confessions of Bikini Pro podcast experience, getting a lot of interest and moving forward with it. I'm always transparent with you guys, always. So that's where my head and heart's been at. And hopefully I'm not just blabbing to no one. And if you're listening to this and have anything you want to share with me about that or thoughts on it, I'm totally open. But I'm excited about it regardless. It's not like I've lost my excitement or desire to do it. It's just that I think the investment of it and different changes in my life have led me to go, I wonder if I did that because I think, or I thought that's what I was. It's an idea that I had though on my heart. So I don't know that it was anything I felt like I had to or was supposed to do, other than I've always felt that I needed to be a trailblazer and do the next best thing and lead the way. And now I've shared this idea, publicly with you guys. And so it's not like it's that different from what I'm sure other people are doing or have done, but like, I don't know. That's enough of that. So number 2, I want to do another podcast party. We had so much fun when we did that. And like, it was so awesome. We did live panels and everyone who showed up was so great. We had amazing sponsors. I would love to do another podcast party. I love speaking. I love live events. I love planning these things. I love seeing others in their element and getting to shine and seeing everyone meeting each other and connect. I'd love to do another podcast party. Number three, I would love to have some more sponsors, but more specifically sponsors within the industry. I have sponsors as an athlete, and I'm so grateful for them. And I get the opportunity to run little ads, as you guys have heard on this. That's my own choice, by the way. I'm not getting paid by them to do that necessarily. It's just I'm doing that because I have codes with them and it helps me to do this. But I would love to have sponsors for specifically like the studio and that type of experience. So if you know a sponsor, you are a sponsor, you want to learn more about that, feel free to contact me. I want to continue to do weekly episodes, and I really don't foresee myself ever stopping doing this podcast. That's something else I want to make clear. As my life changes and evolves, I don't ever see myself not doing this. I want to, and what I'm hoping for, and this was part of what motivated the idea with the experience too, but the podcast is this too, is I hope that in 20 years, people look back and they find Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast experience with, let's say, Jennifer Dory, and it's Jen Dory's episode from, I think we recorded in 2019, maybe the second year of the podcast, maybe. It was a while ago. Or they see Jessica Wilson and all these amazing people I've had on, but I'm saying like everyone's making history in this sport, but I want Confessions of a Bikini Pro to be like a history book for bikini and that evolution from 2018 all the way to 2038. Here's what's happened. I want people 20 years from now to be looking back and using this as like, do you remember when da 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 da? Because we look back and we don't have a ton of content to look back on necessarily. There's old videos and there's magazines and stuff. So I kind of want to be providing that. So continuing this and documenting it and showing people that no matter who they are in the sport, they're important, they're valuable, they're worthy, and they're more than their body. And that is the platform I get to provide, is a place for athletes to tell their story. And I wanted the studio specifically, part of that goal was I wanted people who maybe don't get to do something like the Road to the Olympia with the IFBB, or they don't get to go to Arnold and do meet and greets, and they don't get to showcase these things. Like I could provide that experience for them where they get to come and they get to have the spotlight on them. And it's not about because they're an Olympian or because they're an Arnold competitor, because they're winning the New York Pro, but because of who they are. I want pros to have that experience. So if nothing else, they know that their accomplishments and who they are as a person are still being recognized, rewarded, and celebrated. That's this podcast. I would like to continue to expand into other countries. We've made huge expansions, and I'm not just talking about like, let's just expand. I'm talking about even athletes that I interview and the listeners. And then increase YouTube, because we've been doing video episodes now for a very long time, like a few years now. I think it's been a couple of years now, at least. I'm just hoping that more people are subscribing on YouTube and watching on YouTube, really getting to see the video connection. And then I'm going to share my 6 reflections. Technically, I'm going to share 5 because I already shared one of them, which is the more is not more. Surprised to know that. So my reflection, so I already shared, like, if you compare the first episode to now, what a difference it's made. And that's a big reflection I've had, is just like how much I've grown as a person through this podcast. I remember when I started, like I was studying online for school. I was coaching people online. At the time, I was a fitness coach. And everything I did was online. All my friends had gone off to college, and I was just going to the gym, going to the grocery store, and working online. Granted, that's still pretty much my life, but this gave me an opportunity to practice communication and social skills where I wasn't getting that practice or engagement, and it really filled my cup in that way. But it made me way better in social settings. Like I can go into a lot of social settings now. Counseling helps with this. That's going to be my reflection number 2. But I feel that I can carry and conduct very engaging conversations when both parties are interested in doing so. And there's just been a huge change. Like if you guys go back and listen, and or you've been around, I'd love to hear your perspective. So number two, counseling and podcasting are very similar. Funnily enough, working as a counselor, they had told me they listened to my podcast, they being the people who I worked for in the internship, and how they could see so much of the counseling principles at play. And that's something that I really think sets me apart in the podcasting space. And what I've been told sets me apart is that I can conduct very good conversations, and it flows, and I ask questions in a particular way, and a lot of the athletes have told me how comfortable I make them feel. So, and I'm able to summarize really well or go back to certain points. So much of this was, I think a lot of it I already had within me. And then I started podcasting and it allowed me to share that more. And then I got into counseling and it allowed me to learn even more skills for having great conversations. So, and getting information gathering, really. So that's something that's really cool when I reflect on it. I love that podcasting is almost like, it's not a counseling session, obviously, but it brings out and allows me to use a lot of the skills, and I like that. Number three, I'm motivated by the community and the stories. So the thing that motivates me most is hearing from you guys and talking to the athletes. Like I said, it's not about what can be made from it. It's about what can be learned from it, what can be given from it, what can be taken from it. That's what really motivates me, is knowing I get to shine light on these incredible women. I've always said that, but I get to shine light on amazing women within this sport. So number four, I used to love, this is a reflection I had, I used to love watching, whenever I'd watch sports with my dad, like let's say it was motocross or something, or tennis, he would skip past at the end, like actual competition would be done. And he would skip past the interviews. And I'd always say, Dad, wait. I wanted to watch that. I want to hear what they have to say. Excuse me. So from a young age, I've been very interested in hearing what's happening in the athlete's mind. What were they thinking when they won? What was that journey like? How'd they overcome that injury? What do they plan to do with this? I was always so fascinated and curious about that. And growing up, I was obsessed with the UFC. But specifically, I think what I liked about that is I got to witness their daily life leading up to this dream come true moments for them. So that's been interesting to kind of realize I've always been interested in the athlete mind. And I've been an athlete my whole life, but I always think intuitively I knew that success leaves clues, but also that these people are more than the accomplishments that they have. Number five, reflection. God's plan is better than anything I could ever dream of. Always. God knows best. He put this dream and vision in my heart one day, and I had an incredible, it's so weird. I had an incredible mother, but I still consider I have an incredible mom because she's still my mother. She's just not here anymore, but I got to present the idea to her and we went on a walk and she encouraged me. My dad encouraged me. Everybody encouraged it other than the haters. I had a lot of haters who were like, this isn't going to do anything for your business. This isn't going to make a big difference. And there's no podcast like this. So obviously no one's interested in it. Like I heard a lot of that. I even had doubts of my own. But God's plan is better than anything I could imagine. And giving him the credit for that feels so good because it's always been his. So, yeah, that's something that's been a big realization. I could have questioned it. I could have said, no, I'm not going to do this, but it changed my life. I do not know where I'd be without this podcast. Again, thank you guys. Number six, I already shared with you guys. I'm surprised how much more is in more. So I was thinking of sharing other things, but honestly, I feel really good about everything I just shared. I'm so excited to hear your guys' thoughts. It would be really awesome, if you listen for this long and you've been listening for either a week or you've been listening for 6 years, to hear from you guys. That would mean so much to me and to the athletes. Maybe you could share like your favorite episode of the last 6 years, or maybe you could share something you've learned as a result of this podcast, or maybe you could share it with 6 people. It goes a long way, or one person. It really does. So, as always, if you guys aren't aware, there are episode timestamps on every episode on celestial.fit/podcast, along with links to connect with every athlete and episode summaries, as well as bulleted lists of topics covered. Every week, we post a preview reel of the upcoming athletes, so you can get excited with us. Follow me at celestial_fit to see that. And then on Fridays, we of course post a reel highlighting the episode, and the episodes go live. This is every single Friday. I'm really trying to continue that. I don't want to put too much pressure on myself, but it's now been, I want to say like 5 to 5.5 years of doing an episode every Friday. No vacations, no time off of doing it, but it's just crazy. I love to do it. So if you have any athletes you want to hear on the podcast, send them my way. Let me know why you want to hear them. If you're an athlete, specifically an IFBB Bikini Pro, and you want to be on the show, please reach out. Maybe you're a promoter or a judge, or you have something you want to share with the industry. Reach out to me too. We can always discuss these things as well. Let me know if you guys have any ideas or thoughts on the podcast party or sponsoring the studio, all the things that I shared. I'm really, really grateful again for all of your support. I look forward to the next 6 years. And I'm sure next year, when it's 7 years, I'll say happy 7 years, because I've been celebrating every year, because every year of doing this is a blessing to me. Every year of being able to serve this industry is a blessing to me. And every single year it gets better for me. So appreciate all of you. I'm forever grateful that I have the opportunity to do this. And I hope that you all have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you're listening to this episode. Just make it awesome.